Hey everyone, we're back with another episode of How to Get My Job. We sit down with amazing people within the design and product industry and ask them how their careers started, evolved, and what advice they have for those coming after them. Joining us today is Francesco Stumpo, a product designer at Spotify, who's also a creative and artist. Hey Francesco, how you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for being here. Your career journey is super interesting. I think that you was an architect or was in architecture at some point. Obviously, you're a creative, you're an artist, you're now a product designer at Spotify. So how did you get your first job in design?
Thank you for that thoughtful introduction. And I think that's a great way to start because I try to demystify some of that like linear career path, like always in the same trajectory or the same field. And I think of my sort of design journey started in two ways. One with what I studied, which was architecture, and really jumping into doing that as a profession for myriad of reasons, both my own, like, hey, I study this, I do that, immigration, and also a few other things. So those were like a few of the first jobs I had in traditional like architecture practices, solving, real estate problems or workplace and organization of space. And then I think another one for me was when I stepped outside of those constraints and I did it more voluntarily and by myself, let's say seeking those opportunities that resonated more with me. And that was with OpenIDEO around 2016, 2017. And I did that by just joining a community, both first as a guest and like being part of it, and then leading a chapter where we gathered a ton of people and solved like the design challenges with the community. So that was really the bits of it that sparked my imagination the most because I was no longer like by myself or with a team. I was with a large group of people hosting those type of investigations, design thinking journeys, and that was super, super exciting.
So that kind of joining that community and volunteering your time and working with those other designers to solve design problems really helped kind of with that transition from architecture to product design.
Absolutely. And I think it paved, yeah, the way to think outside of just like one facet of design and see that as an integration of physical space, experimental space, or experiential product design. So it like really like created that synergy.
That's a really good insight because a lot of people may not know that they could potentially do something on the side, even
Absolutely.
like join a community and, you know, go and work with other designers to solve like design problems and kind of get that experience on their portfolios and,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And that's exactly what I love to share because I think it was by sort of diving into it, learning from other people's paths, but also problems so far from maybe my day to day or how I was integrating myself in the city. This was in San Francisco. It was like so enlightening. And I feel like not only a continuation of school, which I love, but also a connection to where I was living, a better like lens to look at the world. So I try to share that as much as I can because I think it's applicable to any stage of your life, but also like any maybe career pivot that you could have, right? You could see it as like, oh, do I really want to spend time doing this? Or how can I gain some experience while I'm also transitioning? Because maybe I'm not able to, go to a boot camp or something else. So I think it's really, there's a lot of bits in there.
Yeah, it's definitely a great alternative to a boot camp. And also it's kind of like a try before you buy. It's like,
Exactly.
oh, do I want to do this? Well, let me just test it out and see whether this is something I want to go into. But yeah, that's really helpful. So yeah, I briefly mentioned in the intro that you're a creative and an artist as well. How does being an artist influence you as a product designer?
I feel like it's embedded in the way that I see the world, but it also has provided me so much areas of exploration. Like I recalled with a project that sort of kickstarted more of my art practice. It was called 100-Day Project. And even that, like sitting down every day to either face a pen and paper or a prompt that I was trying to create, it was because of that consistency and that like capability to see that piece of paper as something interesting, challenging, and exciting, and solve it in a creative way that, yeah, as I did that, I find like that helped tremendously in my design career. And I think they feed off each other often.
So obviously you work at Spotify, and Spotify is one of those companies that everyone says they want to work for. What was it about your experience that helped you land a job at Spotify?
I find like it's almost a combination of all these things that we've been talking about. I think for a while through tackling different issues and projects and jobs, I was accruing this type of experiences. And I would say prior to joining Spotify, I spent a lot of time at a startup thinking of books, authors, and readers. And that was a moment where maybe I had a more clear understanding of like direct to consumer and entertainment and connection between a piece of content and everything. So it all like, if you see it now, it could be seen as like, oh, it makes sense. But then I would say it was like just following these different interests and like really diving into it with curiosity. So I would say, yeah, it was a combination of what I'd done before and then like almost like right timing, right moment. But I would say outside of that, it's also I think, ability to bring like, yeah, curiosity to any problem and presenting that as something transferable that you're also really seeking to learn and to like bring it to the next level. And I say that because it also doesn't have to be a one-to-one experience. Like I see a lot of us get into self-doubt of like, oh, I haven't done B2C, I might not work on B2B, or I haven't done this space, or I've always been in healthcare and it's not transferable. And I think that's where I go back to like, what are you doing outside of what you do every day, or how are you kind of like integrating all yourself and all your experiences into one? And yeah, I think for me that was what helped show up and bringing that architecture background, bringing some of my thinking as an artist, bringing that experience from the startup. Like I think all of it like makes you who you are, and embracing that as like your diverse self was really key. I think if I were to summarize this, I think I'm getting to it, is to bring your authentic self and also embracing those divergent parts of you that come from different parts that you can sort of meld into a cohesive story. Because at the end, it is a storytelling that we can do and maybe bring about like, oh, what are the most relevant bits that I could continue to put forward that are also going to resonate with the problems that I might be solving. And I say that again, maybe the startups and the books and entertainment like helped a bit, but it was also all the foundations that kind of you've been working on both in community, both in creative ways, and I think in also professional ways.
Yeah, definitely. I really liked what you said about, leading with your authentic self, but also like thinking about what are the relevant bits of experience that you can bring forward and that you can present. What is the best career advice you've ever been given?
I try to think of my career in a couple of levels, mostly on those things that I can control, those things that are a bit like in the middle of like me and others, and then the things that are more visible. So at the core, one of the best advices I've received is to, never stop learning, to have that as a priority and keep that curious mindset and growth mindset alive, and to do it on my own, like not relying on others to sort of do that. But in a summary, I try to remind myself almost like the 3 Ps, like people, pay, and projects, and try to prioritize at least one or two of them. If you don't have any of them, then we need to chat and like figure it out.
I really like the way you've kind of summarized it and brought all different aspects together, like, learning, community. Yeah, it's really, really lovely way of kind of summarizing it. Yeah. And I think, yeah, putting it simply as the 3 Ps, people, pay, and projects, is
Yeah.
like a good way to like remember it. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we've come to our last question, which is my favorite, which is, what podcast series or book are you loving right now?
um, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and it threads sort of indigenous histories, both, you know, current, past, um, and a little bit of everything. And it shares tales of her family history, but
Mm.
also just like indigenous communities in the United States. So
Okay.
really insightful, and also very connected to nature and to, yeah, our surrounding world. So that's one that I've been listening to recently. Um, Also checked Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, which talks more about how to show up as a creative in the world and listen to the things that we would want to, do and manifest.
Mm.
And at the end of each little chapter, he also has a gong, and it becomes a bit of a meditation. So again, I really encourage the like listening part of it, because you're hearing the author and it feels like you're right there with them in a long format
Mm.
experience.
The first one sounds super interesting. Actually studied Native American literature.
Yeah,
Um, and I'd say that was like life changing in the sense that it just opened my just blew my mind. Yeah, it was just insane, like reading all these Native American works by all these Native American authors and learning about
yeah,
the history, um and the oral tradition, and just all this
right.
different like cultural different aspects of the culture was fascinating. um yeah, so I'll definitely be checking that recommendation out. And the second, and the one, is it The Creative Act? Or
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds super interesting. So yeah, I'm gonna add that to my list too. I'm just gonna add all of them.
All of it. Absolutely. And I think they're all connected in this way. And I'm glad you mentioned oral history and oral traditions, and just conversations too, because I thought all of this sits in that sphere of kind of tales, but also very intimate, and connecting that like sort of like inner self with the world. And
Mm.
also like, yeah, it was lovely to have her sort of talk to you. And the same with Rick Rubin. The Overstory I read physically. It's a very chunky book, but yeah, you'll definitely be bathed in nature and kind of wanting to be in a forest as you immerse in any of these books for sure. So I try to keep that close and tight, especially for the winter days.
Nice. That does sound like very like ultimate cozy, like winter rainy
Right.
day reading.
And then see
Yeah.
your plants in the bag. So I think you're gonna really love
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much about like cozy living,
that.
plants. Yeah, so that sounds great. Yeah, Francesco, it's been so lovely talking with you. Thank you for being a guest on the show.
Absolutely.
And yeah, until next time, bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave us a review and share it with all of your friends and colleagues. You can follow us at Found by Few on social media. And until next time, bye for now.